Good morning, LinkedIn. Happy Monday. Welcome to the week before inbound. Uh, but we're not going to get carried away. We're still talking about the basics, especially on this show, talking HubSpot adoption today with Mr. Tony Dowling. How you doing, man?
Very well, thank you. Down the off, as we say in Wales. Good afternoon to everybody in this side of the pond. If you're watching, yeah, it's going to be a good show today. Looking forward to it.
It is. And I've been trying to make a lot of this content more accessible, just because we see that the people who are watching it are getting a lot of value out of these strategic conversations. And as I've watched you since we've started, uh, switch towards a singular focus on HubSpot adoption, we're updating, the name of the show to support that switch because it's if we don't have that, we don't have much when it comes to HubSpot. And
This
how
is
are you feeling about this switch
yeah.
you've made?
As I've gone through HubSpot land in the last 5 or 6 years, as I've learned how to do HubSpot more as a partner, because I've been with HubSpot as a user for quite a long time, but as a partner, I've increasingly realized that using the thing is the end game. And there are so many people who don't get that far. And it's criminal. Um, so we Real Inbound, we've created this kind of naming convention. Names that you'll know, but are often used interchangeably, right? But we've sort of created these phases, and the phases you go through in HubSpot is implementation, onboarding, and adoption, as you just mentioned. And I'm really keen that I focus on the adoption piece. There's not, from a business perspective, there's not much to differentiate us all as HubSpot partners from start. So that's one of the reasons why we do it. But it's mainly about the passion I've always had to introduce technology to business. Uh, it's completely wasted if that technology then doesn't get used, right? So I've found myself being drawn more and more and more into this space. So just to clarify for people how we think, right? You may have your own versions of these words, but how we think. Um, Implementation is set in HubSpot, right? Implementing it into your business. And there are lots of things you can do to set it up. You can bring data in, you can import your data, you can segment your data, you can set up workflows, you can connect emails to the email extension, you've got email templates into HubSpot, right? So doing the kind of practical, technical work. When it comes to onboarding, I like to think of onboarding as training, right? So I'm going to onboard you into this system. I'm going to train you in the system, and we do fairly standardized onboarding at a low touch level. So much so, we may talk about this today, Chris, but so much so we've automated onboarding now, so that you go through exactly the same steps in exactly the same way in every single portal. And that basically takes you through all of HubSpot settings and encourages you to correctly set them up, right? And I think that's where a lot of people stop. That's where what people pay to do. They get onboarding from HubSpot particularly, which is terrible, or they get onboarding maybe from a partner, and they get what they ask for. They want technical setup and they want training. But the adoption piece is the bit we constantly see as lacking. I see as lacking. So much so that we've called it the adoption gap, right? So you've bought HubSpot. That is an effort in itself, as people will know. Going through the demos and finding the right subscription for yourself and all those kinds of things. You get very excited about that. Get very excited about that. Salespeople are good at making you excited. You're thinking about the future and the opportunity that you got. You're really excited. You get it set up, you get implemented, get it all plugged in, all the bits switched on, all the lights come up, and you get trained, and then what happens? Then you hit the cliff. You drop off the cliff because the first time you're on your own, you've not got a handheld anymore. Somebody says, "So, what are we doing with HubSpot?" And we're like, "Well, I'm not really sure." And the worst case, then people start working around it. So we're so busy, we don't have time to go back in. We don't have the space. We don't have the headspace to go back in. And then your manager will say, look, I know it's in HubSpot, but can you do me a favor? Can you just do it on a spreadsheet for me so I can get ready for my board report on the weekend? You know, and then bang, you're into the adoption gap, right? So you've got to here, great, brilliant, set up, trained, everybody's ready to go. But how do you get to the business
Yeah.
as usual? I'm using it. And
And
that's what we've been focusing on. And I say that's what I think is the really exciting opportunity for HubSpot partners in this next year and the year coming.
yeah, no, we got to find a way because I think like as you were just talking through it, something came to mind, especially when we talk about, the challenges that HubSpot direct onboarding has. And when we know that a part of the goal is like quick wins, getting some stuff done, what came to mind just now is like the reason it really can't work very well are two things, and that's because we've sold it as a point solution. It's going to be specific to that business to some extent, so we lose any kind of standardization, standardized approach. So you spend a lot of time on onboarding and adoption at the same time, but like adoption with just one person, like the champion or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
admin,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then so at the end of 90 days, that admin or champion has gotten one or two things done as quick wins. And those might be the things that get to keep happening. But then everything else, it's like, oh, how do we report on that? No, you haven't done that yet. That hasn't been a quick win. Okay, export it so I can put it in my spreadsheet or my deck. And now, like you mentioned, so maybe that's a part of the
It,
issue is trying to
there's
do too much
hu-
at once there.
huge part. There's trying to do too much at once, but also I think we're talking to the wrong people. So managers are under enormous amounts of pressure. Think of us as businesses at the minute, as entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses. We know how tough it is out there, right? Everybody's under the same sort of pressure. And management in organizations that we support are in as much as anybody, if not more, right? So what do they do? They If they're anything like me when I was a manager, they're spinning plates. We're keeping all these plates spinning, and the new CRM will be one of the plates. And what I want to do is I want to have oversight. I want to make sure we're buying the right thing. I want to make sure there's a sensible program in place, and then I'm going to delegate it out. I'm going to delegate it to the admin. I'm going to delegate it to the sales director. I'm going to delegate it to marketing and service teams, which is fine. But that's the mistake. That's the misstep that we make. So if you're very lucky, somebody in the organization who doesn't have the authority to make any changes will understand HubSpot. If you're very lucky. But they'll be the one that everybody ignores. So when they're saying you're not doing your data properly, you're not entering the data properly, you're not filling out the form properly, you're not using the email extension, you're not logging your calls and so on and so on. Nobody cares because they're so low down in the organization, it doesn't make a difference. So the
Yeah.
people we need to be talking to is actually the management. And that's a really hard conversation to have, right? It's actually very easy to be delegated down the chain as a HubSpot partner and to talk to the functional specialists, the people using the thing. Very easy. But we've got to fight tooth and nail to avoid falling down that chute, come into a different place in the organization where we can't deliver the value that we could otherwise deliver, the adoption value. No, I'm not. This all starts to sound really complicated, but we're not talking about things that are really complicated. We're simply talking about building the organization's strategy into HubSpot. We've talked about this on this show before, right? Basically, if the organization's strategy is in HubSpot and they're using what we like to call a management control system to drive the transformation, right? To drive the changes that they're looking to make, which again isn't as complicated as it sounds, but then it's going to be a successful adoption. And if they don't do that, it won't. So don't build strategy into it. Don't use something to control the program. It'll fail. Sure
It's
as
that,
eggs is eggs.
yeah, it's that simple.
It is.
And I'd love to talk about this in the context of the new tool you've created. Is that possible?
Yeah, no, well, and that's why one of the reasons why. So I've been consumed with this idea for a year, maybe more. I'm talking to lots of people, talking to partners, talking to clients. cannot get over how the same thing appears to happen to me and to my colleagues in the partner ecosystem over and over and over again. And that is, we get a gig with the client, we introduce the client, we train them, we onboard them, whatever you want to call it. And what happens? They just drop off. I think HubSpot are creating a real problem for themselves because they increasingly sell all these lovely features that are coming out. There's a brand new one out this morning. The sales space is finally launched. Right. Looks fantastic, right? That means we're going to have to teach that to a whole load of people now as well, because there's yet another feature coming out. And we miss the chance to talk about it strategically. So what we've done is we finally managed, after a big effort, actually, to codify our approach, right? So we as the first part is what I've already said. We broke it down into implementation, onboarding, and adoption. And what we've realized, there are pieces particularly in the implementation and the onboarding, that are very consistent, almost to the fact where any partner can probably do a pretty decent job for you.
Yes, I love that. Like, so often, and this could be any business function. In my experience, it often happens with quoting, right? You try to standardize something, and just the first response, oh, it's complex. It's customized every time, so it doesn't make any sense to standardize. And like you're mentioning, whether it's 1%, 10%, 50%, there's always something that happens the same way every time.
Yep.
And that's where we start. We don't start with, okay, we're going to turn the whole thing into the standardized approach, and now nobody can get to use HubSpot to customize. Like that balance between customization and standardization, I've been thinking about it all year since last year. And the beauty is when you can standardize, which I'm sure you're about to get into. Now this thing is like clockwork. Right now, all the time is spent on the customization, the value for the business, the adoption, yes, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly, because you're not reinventing the same solution over and over and over again. You're creating a corporate memory for your agency, and then you're also creating the ability to refine, right, to become really good at doing that thing. And that means doing it quicker, and that means doing it more cheaply. And, there's actually little value in onboarding and implementing HubSpot. There's little value in it, right? So agencies have spent a long time, I think, as of HubSpot, obfuscating, making this stuff look more complicated than it is in order to justify the money that they want to charge for it. So actually, it transpires. There's 35 steps to a standard HubSpot onboarding, which I'll show you in a minute, that we've worked out 35 steps, and it applies to every single customer. That's just the implementation, right? That's just the onboarding piece, rather. That's just setting HubSpot up, right? By the time we get to the adoption piece, that's where everything becomes customized. That's because now you have to take your strategy. And this is where it gets, for me, really interesting. Because you don't want me to tell you what your strategy should be. And in fact,
Please.
When I do tell you what your strategy should be, you're probably not going to listen. And this is, I think, the difference, right? So when a HubSpot partner or anybody else in the digital marketing world comes along and gives you a cookie cutter or an off-the-shelf or a ChatGPT defined strategy for something, they're doing it with the best intentions, right? They're saying, this is what your typical sales strategy should look like. This is what your typical marketing strategy, this is what your typical emails, fine, good, brilliant, right? But it goes in one ear and out the other, because the client doesn't see any value in it whatsoever, because that's the bit that doesn't suit them. So I've worked in Scotland. You may not know some of these exotic places, Chris. I worked in Scotland, in England, in Wales, obviously, in Europe, in Africa, in the US, in Australia, right? Every single sales team I've worked with tells me that their business is different. And none of them are.
Yeah.
We all face the same problems, right? Yeah. So this was the idea behind this approach that we take. So we have phase one. It's a very cheap, because it's cheap for us to do. It's a very cheap automatic onboarding, which you basically follow a preset cadence of activities. You can do it on your own, and bang, and set your HubSpot up to a level. You're probably not going to want to do major uh, workflows or analysis or anything like that, but you're going to get the things set. We're
Right.
going to teach you how to use the sales tools. We're going to teach you how to use the marketing tools. The standard tools, the kind of the backbone of HubSpot. You don't, ideally that would be face to face, but I'll show you. We use videos to do it. But where it all stops, as it were, is that bridge, the adoption gap. How do you get your strategy in there? Not my strategy for you, your strategy. And I think there's a dirty little secret here as well, and that is that lots of businesses don't actually have. So then you get the blind leading the blind, right? So then you get a partner who's coming in who's trying to help you, trying to tell you what to do. It's not making any sense. It doesn't resonate. It's not sticking at all because you don't know what to do as a client. You haven't got the first faintest foggiest idea of what the heck you're talking about. And I think that's why this approach is so good, right? So we're going to go, this is the easy bit. Let's automate that. This is the easy bit. That's commoditized, not commoditized, that's the wrong word, although it will become commoditized.
I mean, it's
Templatize it.
like you're not investing in something that can send emails. Like that is a commodity. You can get that anywhere for
Yeah,
free,
totally.
right? All these little things that we spend time on. And that's where when you find out there is no strategy, and I usually assume there isn't one, like, because that's for me, it's the difference between like the blue chip companies and everybody
Yes,
else, right?
yes, agree.
That muscle has just not been developed. I don't know if it's not taught or whatever. It's not there. So then you get to the point where that's when they look to HubSpot to be the strategy. It's like, oh, and then the people selling HubSpot
HubSpot
or
is
servicing
not a
HubSpot.
strategy. Yeah,
It's like,
totally.
okay, you want more leads? HubSpot can do that for you. No,
No.
HubSpot can help you get more leads, but it will not decide that for you. Should not let it. You might get lucky, and I'm sure people get lucky all the time. Just send a few more
Yeah,
emails,
yeah,
bam, more
yeah.
leads, right?
Well, product market fit, isn't it? If you've got product market fit, almost accidentally,
Right.
you're going to sell some stuff.
Yeah.
If if you trip over a market that hasn't been serviced with a product that works and that people like, bang, suddenly you're going to make lots of money. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to sustain it or innovate from there or increase efficiencies or anything else. The true kind of running of the business. Um,
Yeah.
so let's really clarify here, right? Because I feel very passionate about this. We're talking about strategy. And we're talking about the adoption gap, right? This is as simple as it gets. Okay, this is what I mean when I say strategy. You're here, Mr. Client, right? Now, chances are you probably don't know exactly where you are. But let's say you're here. Let's agree we're at this point, wherever that point is. You want to get here. And guess what? The chances are you don't know where that is either. Right? All strategy is the path between those two things. How are you going to step from here to here? Now, unless you know where you are and where you want to go, how can you create a map to get you there? How can you create a strategy to get you there? So that's the work. When I say we're doing strategy with our clients to close the adoption gap, that's what we do it. Now, can I share screen, Chris? Can I show you
Yes.
the tool?
Yep.
Do I have to do anything special on
I shouldn't.
share? Share, there you
But
go.
as you bring that up, it's the kind of the third piece I'd add there is just understanding how you got to where you are, like
Yes, yes,
fully
yes, yes, yes.
understanding it and not like taking it for granted, because that's the problem, is that, you know, and it's amazing the different sizes of business I've seen this between 2 million and 500 million. There's this point where it's like, okay, no more mom and pop shop, time to scale, or no more garage business, time to scale,
Yeah,
right? And if you can't look back and understand that what you've been doing is has no chance of getting you to where you want to go, right? It's just the incremental stuff that adds up, and that all falls to the human beings on the team
yeah,
when they just get hammered every day by the scale that, like, without the systems and the tools to do
yeah,
it.
yeah. And it's as easy as where are we? Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? And such a good point. How did we get where we are? What mistakes did we make? What did we do really well? What do we want to change doing? Change. What do we want to stop doing? Really simple, simple question. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So this is a live HubSpot portal, but hopefully you can't see any data that's going to get me into any sort of trouble, right? I've put it onto the company's view. If anybody, most people will probably recognize this, okay?
Yep.
And what I've got is our Sidekick app switched on. So this is where it lives. It lives in it's a Chrome pop-up on the side of the screen. We can make it bigger or make it smaller depending on your requirements. You can actually make it quite small, get it out of the way. But I'm gonna keep it quite big for a second. And I'm going to show you what I mean by automatic. Okay, so there are a few things here that we set up with the app when it's installed, and that you run with as an organization. First thing I want to talk to you about is process rules. Okay, so we want to tell HubSpot using Sidekick, we want to tell HubSpot what you absolutely want to be the case in the portal. So for instance, I want company name to be part of the company record. Okay, so this is throwing up here an error that the company name is unknown. It's also giving me a warning that the company phone number is unknown. These are process rules, right? If I were to go into this record and add those things in, those will disappear. Those error messages, those warnings disappear. Okay, so I have a very visual, I'd even go so far as to say annoying, reminder that the data here is incomplete. That's not up to my own standard. Now, obviously, when I'm demoing it, I like to have quite a lot of it so I can jump in and show people what happens when you change it, right?
Yep.
But when you, for the sake of this very short presentation, when you change it, it disappears. So that's the first thing that really helps people get to grips very, very quickly with the data dictionary that you've built for your business.
I'm glad you said that part. The data dictionary,
Yes.
the common language. And this is where just visibility at all times about some of this stuff. This is where you could start with every sales team has some similar things that they
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
So then, like, no discussions about that stuff. It's just like, of course you want to see a warning if a phone number is not there.
Yeah.
Like every sales team in the history requires a phone number. So yeah, that's not a big deal. Let's not talk about it. Now let's talk
Absolutely.
about stuff that matters
You
to your
don't have to,
organization.
we're not doing a big lens or it. We're literally teaching the non-CRM specialists what they need to do, right? So you've got to update that record. Okay. Now, over here, this is the onboarding program itself. Now you can see there are a couple of different headings here. We've got HubSpot Essentials, we've got Data Management, and we've got HubSpot Tools. Okay. And the idea of this is when maybe you're working on your own, you can work with us. Obviously, you don't have to do it on your own. But if you want to set up HubSpot for yourself, you basically click into the first tab, the first card, as we call it. And what you'll get is a video walkthrough that shows you how to get it all set up. And you'll get a little process map. So for those of us who like a bit of a visual aid, with a little key there, as you can see, and a bit of an explanation there.
Yeah.
And that's how to get your settings set up. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love this.
Piece of cake.
Because I think it's helpful to clarify when we say automate, and I'm making an assumption here based on knowing you, does not mean remove Tony Dowling from the process or whoever is supposed to be doing the adoption, right? Now it turns Tony into the coach role instead of the doer or
100%.
even consultant. It's like, hey, because like without this, Tony is forced to, you got to work with me in order to onboard, like if you have any chance, right? But with this, it's like, hey, here's the playbook. These are before the next call, before the next, get together. Here's what you should be able to do. Now, if you run into issues doing that basic stuff, that's what the conversations are about, not about what do we need to do.
Exactly. This stuff is just, these are gimmies, Chris, this is, we could quickly swap this out. And I would encourage clients, if you have IT people or you've got admin people or whatever, do your own videos, make your own ones and edit this into that, make them something for your own business. You don't have to use our videos, but for the sake of it, the navigation then just clicks you through to the next one. So this gives you the notification settings. Then we go to privacy and consent screens. And again, we're taking you through it either visually, got a little key here so you can follow what's going on and what's needed, or you can watch the video and it can teach you how to do it. Now, the other thing we can do, let me see if I can show you really quickly, is we can take one of those cards and we can actually pin it elsewhere in CRM. Okay, so that general card that we just looked at, this navigate to general card here. This is quite useful. I quite like this, right? So let's take that piece of copy and let's pin it to the words general here in the actual settings. So I'm going to click on that. That's going to give me, in this case, a close-up of the diagram, right? It could be the video, it could be anything else. But this is now, as you can see, this is in line when I'm in HubSpot. When I'm like, what do I do here again? Oh, yeah. I don't remember. Ah, yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'll just get rid of that now. And obviously, we've only got one or two around to demonstrate it, right? But for a new starter, you could have one of those on every single heading if you want.
Yes. And this is how you bridge the gap, because
exactly.
HubSpot cannot make everything, and I'm glad they don't.
No,
they cannot make all of these, because in some systems you can, and that's why there are always messes. Like all these words on the screen, we can't customize everything. There's a good reason that HubSpot has chosen a lot of this language. That doesn't mean there's no bridge to how your business refers to this stuff, right? And this is a way to build that bridge.
Now, in our adoption program, right, we move on a step here, and exactly what you've just said. What we'll do with you is we'll work with you to create your own system. Okay, so currently that would be our language, right? That's our chart.
Yeah.
But it's probably way more relevant for your management team to work with admins and sales to come up with their own versions of these things and build them into this. That's precisely how we go from implementation and onboarding into adoption.
Yeah. So it also provides a great opportunity to teach as you do that.
100%.
Right? Yep. Because people come up with words that they've known for a long time, or, maybe it's like, this is where it's like, you don't bring the entire existing process into HubSpot. You figure out how to evolve it into HubSpot and make those, it's also a good place where you can compromise, like let them have what they want sometimes to grease the wheels.
You've got to work it through. Yeah, you've got to work it through as a team. That's the whole point. I can't come in and tell you how to do it. You've got to work out how to do it yourself. That's why adoption fails, because people tell you what to do, and it's not relevant.
And so with this immediate accountability that you can create here, this immediate documentation, it's like, remember last week we agreed on this word to mean this thing.
Yeah.
Here it is all over the portal. Yeah. So it just.
This is exactly what it's designed for. We've also got some how to use Marketing Hub, how to use Sales Hub. So if you go into here, you've got deal-based automation. We've got connected your emails, download the sales extension. All the basic stuff that everybody has to do. Here's how to use the products tool in HubSpot. For some reason it's not behaving itself. There you go. How to set your calendar. There's the even down to the prospecting overview. We've got videos on how to use prospecting. So we got a whole ton of teaching, right? You're also going to get all of the HubSpot updates from our weekly show. I'm sure everybody tunes in. Every Wednesday, we do a quick run through all the HubSpot updates. So there's a big list of those there. We've even got a HubSpot glossary. So, as simple as, what does that word mean? Well, we could jump into the glossary. And obviously, we could take a word from the glossary and we can pin it like here. So we can actually link directly to the glossary. If that's what people need, that's what we can build from. Now, we go a bit further as well. For say, we've built a number of, we call these guides, right? So these are going to show you how to do the consistent things that everybody needs to do. So I've actually got a duplicate there, but I want to add a company to HubSpot. Okay, let's have a look. I'm going to click on this, and this is going to show me, sorry about that. This is going to show me where I need to click. It's going to take me through exactly the steps I need to do in order to add a company to HubSpot. If I'm not 100% happy with that, I can actually get this thing to guide me to do it. You'll notice it's now taken over my screen, and it's going to walk me through by actually clicking on the screen myself what I need to do in order to create the company. It's a bit slow because I'm sharing screen.
Wow. I've not seen this in action yet.
Right? So I can do, as you can see, yeah, I can do them for, sorry, get rid of that. I could do them for contacts, personas, adding telephone number, right? Really simple, basic things. We can do it for building chat flows. We could do it for associating contacts. Pretty much anything that you can do in HubSpot, we can build a guide here for you and your team to pop in whenever you need to and just have a look. And the beauty of this approach is that you'll have your own specific SOP section. You'll have your own standard operating procedures that are just for you. You can send
And it's
up
in the app, in
all
where you're
in there.
doing the work. It is
Yeah.
not in some
Nope.
printed
We're not going anywhere
binder.
else. We're not having to go to the back of the office, to the documentation, blow the dust off it and find the right page. It's
Right.
literally all here. There's loads of things that it does, but yeah, that's
No,
pretty
this is
much
brilliant. And again, like I reiterate, because again, your recent post, it's like companies like HubSpot, I've seen in the manufacturing space too, they try to develop products that remove the human element of the adoption process, that we can just make it so they can just push a button, you know, type in a thing, and then it's all going to work. And it just doesn't. It
Yep.
just does not work. So when you develop as like, do you look at tools like this, it is not a replacement at all. It's again, it helps Tony have much more valuable conversations, like whenever you do need to have the conversation. And that's where just knowing that, like, you might run into a customer that does it all. Like, you get those engineers and the scientists that just give me the docs, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But knowing that Tony's there is the difference between, like, if they think it's 100% automated, like if there were no partner and you had links to the knowledge base docs and the projects area of HubSpot, as soon as it doesn't work, like, I'm out. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'll get to it tomorrow, whatever. But when you combine that with the coach or the partner, Tony in this case, it's like they're willing to go forward because they know if there's a problem, they just reach out to Tony.
Yep.
He gives them a quick link, right?
That's where the value is, right? There's little value, I think, in onboarding and implementation per se. Especially if you're removed from the process and you don't want to know how things were put together or plugged in and so on and so on. But when you get stuck on a thing, particularly when you get stuck on a thing because of process or not even so much methodology, but because your sales process suddenly doesn't make sense in light of the way you've built your pipeline. That's where I want to talk. That's where I want to help you understand. How can we remove steps from your process? How can we make it faster? How can we technologically enable your salespeople so that they provide a better service? How can we become more customer focused by leaning on the CRM database? That's where we will provide you with value. So this stuff now is so easy for us to deploy in one button push. It's immediately in your portal. Say there's lots of things you can do with it. That's our step one. That's our first level engagement. Bang. We even do deals for teams of less than 5 people. It's the cheapest I've ever seen. Our middle stage is we'll build this for you. So we'll come in, we'll do your integrations, we'll do all the other things that other HubSpot partners do. We all do it. There's no reason why you should pick one or the other of us. So that's our middle phase. But then the killer piece for me, the exciting piece, the bit that we get really into doing is the adoption piece. That's the third phase. So you got the
Yes.
automatic, you got the kind of do it for you, if you like, and then you got the big, let's all get together, let's work out the strategy. This is where we are, this is where we want to get to. How do we get there? And how do we build that? So that's it.
Yeah. No, it's brilliant because as we've been talking, the thing that keeps coming back, and I've been talking about this with Willem a lot, um, and we got an exciting episode next week with Matt Bolian coming on the show with Willem. Um, it's an ongoing process, right? We think
Yep.
we're starting to understand that the marketing and sales, the buyer journey is not linear at all.
Yes.
In a lot of businesses, this adoption journey is not, especially when you're using a tool like HubSpot, because they're always giving you new tools. So there's a constant onboarding adoption flow that you need to get to.
Yep.
And don't think of any of this as a script. It is a foundation because I love having the conversations with the sales guys when it's like, hey, I keep running into this process rule. So I gotta just throw them in this stage. I gotta throw the deals in this stage, but they should be coming in here, right? It's like, okay, maybe we need a different pipeline. Maybe we need to update the process. But if it doesn't make sense to have it the way it is, let's change it.
Yeah.
Now that we have this documentation, we don't have this gray area conversation every week where, the system just stops being used because it doesn't work the way that people need it to work from the day to day. And that's just one example, right?
These are the things that we have to be brave about. We have to be brave about as partners because we have to have this conversation with the client and they may not want to hear it. And you have to be brave as the client, right? As the customer bringing it in, because you probably didn't think of this. When you thought HubSpot was the solution to a thing, it's unlikely that you perceived it to come with this whole change program, which is what it will come with. And I'll say, for the record, it's not in every case by any means, but in my experience, to change a business, to move it digital, if I can say that, right? To adopt a HubSpot is a year-long obligation on everybody's part. It's going to take that long because people learn at different speeds. People learn in different ways. Guess what? You're going to get it wrong, and it'll need to be fixed. And then it'll need to be iterated from there, and then tweaked. And then, bang, then you hit acceleration. That's when it gets really exciting. But it is not a switch it on, plug it in solution. Plug and play in it. It's not plug and play solution. It's not. I think the more ready we are to have that conversation with people, the better off everybody's going to be.
Well, I thank you for helping us get to that point, man. This is great stuff. I look forward to, we're going to be on next week since you got the early Monday show. Inbound will have not officially started yet.
Wow.
So I'll still be in Houston. So we'll get
and
to dig into
I'll
some
still
more.
be in Swansea.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we're getting really excited for Inbound next week. I'm sure there'll be tons of buzz because it will still be the week of Inbound, even though it hasn't officially started yet.
No, it'll be great.
So
it'll be really
sure
cool
there'll be at the very least, some interesting update drops to talk about. But there's always something to talk about when it comes to adoption. So thank you so much, man.
Awesome.
It's been awesome. And if you're out there, just all the documentation, if you like the idea of having that in-app support and documentation like Tony just showed, think about how that could massively level up your team or just get them on the first step, right? It can cover all the bases, move you forward, look for that opportunity, and let's grow. Have a great week, everybody.